The emergency beacon tore through the silence of deep space like a wounded animal's scream. At exactly 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time, the quantum relay stations across 3 star systems suddenly erupted with a signal so desperate, so filled with raw terror, that it caused automatic emergency protocols to activate on 17 different SLAT worlds simultaneously. Admiral Vexter was enjoying his morning stimulant aboard the flagship Harmony's Dream, when the transmission hit his communication array like a sledgehammer. Its 4 tentacles, normally graceful and controlled, began trembling uncontrollably as the ship's AI began automatic decoding. The voice that emerged from the static was human, and humans never sounded this afraid. "This is Colony Commander Jake Morrison of Mining Station Delta Prime, Kepler Sector 7-7-Alpha ... The voice cracked with exhaustion and something that made Vexter's chromatophores flash warning colors. "We're under siege by unknown hostiles. They came from below, from the deep mining shafts. Our automated defense grid is down. External communications are failing. God help us, they're in the walls now." A sound erupted from the transmission that Vexter would remember for the rest of his long life: metal, tearing like paper, followed by a scream that definitely wasn't human. Then Jake Morrison's voice returned. Higher now, desperate. They're learning. Every time we fire, they adapt. Every time we fall back, they follow. They're herding us toward the central habitat domes. We have 12,000 civilians here, including 800 children. Anyone receives this transmission, we are requesting immediate military assistance. Coordinates are attached. This is Commander Morrison, signing off. Tell Earth. ... Tell Earth. We tried to hold the line. The transmission dissolved into a symphony of chaos static mixed with inhuman shrieks that seemed to come from creatures with too many throats, punctuated by the distinctive whine of human plasma weapons firing on full automatic. Then silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any sound. Vexter stared at the communication console, its blue blood running cold through his circulatory system. Delta Prime, he knew that designation. Every military commander in the galaxy knew about the human mining operations in the Outer Rim. Those installations were built like fortresses, designed to withstand everything from asteroid impacts to full-scale military assaults. What kind? A force could overwhelm their defenses. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Zelda, her voice barely audible above the bridge's environmental systems. "The colony registry shows Delta Prime as ... human territory." She paused, her species equivalent of swallowing hard. Class 12 classification. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the ship's drives. Every alien present knew what that meant. Humans, the Deathworld spawn who had somehow clawed their way off a planet so violently hostile that the Galactic Survey Corps had initially classified it as uninhabitable by intelligent life. These were the beings whose homeworld featured weather patterns that could kill you, predators that hunted in coordinated packs, and gravity so intense that most civilized species couldn't even stand upright on its surface. And yet, somehow impossibly, humans had not just survived on Earth, they had thrived. They had turned their nightmare world into a garden, tamed its predators, harnessed its storms, and eventually built starships to carry their terrifying adaptability to the stars. The same species that considered recreational activities like mountain climbing and deep-sea diving to be relaxing pastimes. But here's the thing that really kept Vexter awake at night. If something was hunting humans, what hope did the rest of the galaxy have? "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, tentacles dancing across holographic displays. "Long-range sensors show Delta Prime's location. It's built into an asteroid mining platform, heavily fortified, with redundant shield generators, and enough firepower to hold off a battle fleet." He paused. Whatever took it down did so in less than 6 hours. 6 hours. Vexter had seen human military documentaries. He knew their response times, their tactical doctrine, their absolute refusal to abandon their own. If a human colony had been transmitting distress calls for 6 hours without reinforcement, it meant something had gone catastrophically wrong.
Sir.
"There's something else," the communications officer continued, her voice shaking. "We're detecting similar distress beacons from 3 other human installations in adjacent sectors. All went dark within the last 48 hours. All reported the same thing, something coming from below, something that learns and adapts. The implications hit Vexter like a physical blow. This wasn't a random attack. This was coordinated, systematic. Something was specifically targeting human settlements, and it was winning. "Assemble Task Force Mercy," Vexter commanded, his voice betraying none of the terror coursing through his system. "Full battle configuration." Signal the hegemony, the Confederation, and the Free Worlds Alliance. This is now a code black emergency. He paused, looking at the tactical display showing the location of the silent human colony. "And pray to whatever gods you believe in that we're not too late."
Ow.
But even as he gave the orders, even as his fleet began the rapid preparations for emergency hyperspace transit, Admiral Vexter knew conventional forces wouldn't be enough. Not against whatever could threaten Earth's children. Because in 50 years of galactic service, he had learned one immutable truth about humans. They didn't call for help unless the alternative was extinction. The question that haunted him is, the fleet prepared to jump was simple and terrifying. If humanity's apex predators were calling for rescue, what exactly were they running from? Captain Marcus Stone stood in the war room of the UES Retribution, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the tactical console so hard his knuckles had gone white. The holographic briefing materialized before him like a nightmare given form thread dimensional. Representations of Delta Prime's mining complex. Now overrun by something that defied every law of civilized warfare. 16 hours. That's how long Admiral Vexter's task force had been orbiting the silent colony. Watching helplessly as whatever had taken Delta Prime consolidated its hold on 12,000 human lives, Stone could see it in the alien commander's body language. Way his tentacles writhed with barely contained panic. The rapid color changes across his chromatophores that his species translator was struggling to convert into coherent speech. "Captain Stone," Vexter began, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "What we discovered at Delta Prime challenges everything we understand about biological warfare." The holographic display shifted, showing sensor readings that made Stone's blood run cold. The creatures emerged from the planet's core through the deepest mining shafts. Initial scans suggest they are bioweapons of unprecedented sophistication, 30 feet in length, with exoskeletons that adapt to incoming fire in real time. Stone studied the data streaming across his neural interface, his enhanced cognitive implants processing information at superhuman speed. The creatures weren't just large, they were impossibly advanced. Hive intelligence, with individual initiative, adaptive armor that could counter energy weapons within minutes of first contact. Sensory organs that could track targets through solid rock, but there was something else in the data that caught his attention. Something the aliens had missed. Admiral Stone interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 20 years in Earth's most elite military units. These aren't just predators. Look at the attack patterns. Look at how they've positioned themselves throughout the colony. His finger traced paths on the holographic display. Not trying to kill everyone immediately. They're herding survivors towards specific locations. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. These things weren't just hunting, they were farming. Vexter's image flickered with what Stone recognized as his species' equivalent of nausea. Our xenobiologists reached the same conclusion. The creatures appeared to be collecting specimens. Live specimens. He paused, and Stone could hear the exhaustion in his translated voice. "Captain, we have tried everything."
Bombardment.
From orbit, they've developed energy absorption capabilities. Ground assault teams, they anticipated every tactical approach our best strategists could devise. They learn from every engagement, evolve countermeasures faster than we can adapt. Our methods. The bridge of the Retribution had gone silent except for the steady hum of the ship's fusion drives. Stone's crew battle-hardened veterans of a dozen alien conflicts watched their captain with the kind of attention usually reserved for funeral services. They all knew what those sensor readings meant. Delta Prime wasn't just under attack, it was being consumed. "How many survivors?" Stone asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Unknown," Vexter replied, his tentacles performing what Stone recognized as his species' gesture of helplessness. The creatures have severed all communication networks. Long-range biological sensors detect approximately 8,000 life signs concentrated in the deep emergency shelters, but he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. But they wouldn't stay hidden forever. Stone didn't need the alien to spell it out. Whatever these things were, they were methodical, patient. Eventually, they would dig out every last human, and then Stone pushed that thought away. Some possibilities were too dark to contemplate. Admiral Vexter, Stone said, his voice cutting through the bridge's oppressive silence. You've thrown your entire battle fleet at these creatures. 12 ships, each one more advanced than anything Earth has ever built. Your plasma cannons can crack moons. Your shielding can withstand direct hits from stellar flares. And you're telling me that none of it matters? The alien commander's chromatophores flashed patterns that the translator couldn't quite capture. Shame, perhaps, mixed with desperate hope. Captain Stone, these beings are beyond our capabilities. They possess intelligence that exceeds our combat algorithms, adaptability that surpasses our technological advantages. What can your 3 ships accomplish that our battle fleet cannot? Here's where most people would expect the human captain to boast about superior technology, advanced weapons, or revolutionary tactics. Instead, Marcus Stone smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the kind of smile that predators wore right before they reminded the food chain who was really in charge. Admiral Stone said, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with the right application of controlled violence. You've been fighting these creatures like civilized beings. You've been trying to outsmart them, out-tech them, outmaneuver them. He gestured toward the tactical display showing the alien fleet's failed assault patterns. But here's what you missed. These things have never faced humans before. Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez, monitoring communications from the alien ships, looked up from her console with an expression that mixed professional respect with genuine amusement. Captain, I'm picking up chatter from the alien fleet. Rough translation suggests they think we've lost our minds. Good, Stone replied, his smile becoming genuinely predatory. Fear makes them predictable. Right now, everyone in this system, alien and monster alike, is about to learn something important. He turned back to Vexther's holographic image, and for a moment, the alien commander saw something in the human's eyes that made his evolutionary ancestors' warnings about apex predators suddenly seem very, very relevant. Admiral, you're about to discover why humans are the only species in the galaxy that other apex predators are afraid of. We're not going to outthink these creatures, not going to out-tech them. Stone's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. We're going to show them what it means to be hunted by something that spent 4 million years learning how to kill everything else on the most dangerous planet in known space. The tactical display updated with new information as the human fleet adjusted course toward Delta Prime. 3 ships against an enemy that had defeated 12. Most species would call it suicide. Humans called it Tuesday. Hey, let's go save our people, Stone commanded, and somewhere in the deep emergency shelters of Delta Prime, 8,000 humans felt hope flicker back to life, though they didn't yet know why. The drop pod's heat shield glowed white-hot as it carved through Delta Prime's atmosphere like a falling star, its ceramic ablative plating screaming in protest against the planet's dense air. Inside the cramped cockpit, Sergeant Danny Walsh checked his equipment one final time. No weapons. It's just sensor gear and his grandmother's rosary tucked inside his tactical vest. You might wonder why a trained killer would volunteer to drop naked into hell itself. The answer was simple. Someone had to find out what these monsters wanted with his people. The pod's retro thrusters fired at the last possible second, converting a terminal velocity impact into what the training manual optimistically called a controlled descent. Walsh felt his teeth rattle as the pod slammed into the central plaza of what had once been humanity's most prosperous mining colony. Through the armored viewport, he could see the aftermath of whatever had swept through Delta Prime like a plague of nightmares. "Command, this is Pathfinder," he whispered into his throat mic, his voice barely audible above the pod's cooling systems. "Touchdown successful. Beginning reconnaissance sweep." The pod's hatch hissed open, and Walsh stepped into a scene that belonged in humanity's darkest mythology. Bodies lay scattered across the plaza like broken dolls abandoned by a psychotic child. But here's what made Walsh's enhanced soldier instincts prickle with unease. The bodies were positioned, arranged, not randomly scattered by panicked flight, but deliberately placed in patterns that suggested intelligence behind the slaughter. Worse yet, most of the colony's infrastructure remained intact. The power grid hummed quietly. The atmospheric processors continued their steady rhythm. Even the decorative fountains still functioned. "The bugs want the infrastructure, Walsh," reported his trained eye, cataloging details that would have escaped civilian observation. "They're keeping our people alive for a reason." The words tasted like poison in his mouth, because a soldier with 20 years' experience knows the difference between random violence and systematic harvesting movement caught his peripheral. Visiony shadows sliding between the residential modules with predatory grace. Walsh's enhanced reflexes, products of decades of genetic optimization and neural conditioning, kicked into overdrive. Time seemed to slow as his training took control, flooding his system with combat stimulants that sharpened every sense to razor clarity. The creature that emerged from the shadows defied every biological principle Walsh had studied in military xenobiology courses. 30 feet of living obsidian, its exoskeleton seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Multiple sensory organs clustered around what might charitably be called a head, each one focusing on different spectrums of electromagnetic radiation. Its limbs, too many limbs, sended in appendages that could serve as both manipulation tools and weapons. Each one sharp enough to cut through military-grade armor plating. But what really made Walsh's blood turn to ice wasn't the creature's size or obvious lethality. It was the intelligence in those alien eyes. This wasn't a mindless predator operating on instinct. This was something that thought, planned, and calculated. Something that had studied human behavior and found it ... useful. Christ, Captain. Stone's voice crackled through the come from orbit, the professional composure slipping for just a moment. "Danny, get out of there now." Walsh forced himself to remain motionless, barely breathing, as the creature stalked past his position with liquid grace. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to fight, to do anything except stand there like prey, waiting for slaughter. But 20 years of special operations had taught him something that separated elite soldiers from corpses. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is the safest thing you can do. "Negative, sir," Walsh whispered, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline threatening to overwhelm his system. "These things have patterns. Give me 60 seconds. The creature's attention seemed focused on something deeper in the colony. The main mining complex where the emergency shelters were located. Walsh watched it move with the patience of something that had all the time in the world, secure in its dominance of the situation. The confidence would be its weakness. Predators who had never faced effective resistance tended to develop predictable habits. When the nightmare finally disappeared into the underground access tunnels, Walsh sprinted toward the mining complex with the enhanced speed that made him worth his weight in military-grade platinum. His augmented hearing picked up sounds that would have been inaudible to unmodified humans, the whisper of air through ventilation shafts, the subtle vibrations of machinery deep underground, and something else that made his enhanced adrenal glands dump another shot of combat drugs into his bloodstream. Human voices. Crying in the dark, Walsh activated his suit's passive sensor array, painting the underground structure with invisible radiation that revealed what the creatures had been doing for the past 16 hours. The data that flowed into his neural interface was simultaneously the best and worst news possible. "Command, survivors confirmed in the deep levels," he reported, his voice tight with professional control. "I'm reading approximately 8,000 life signs concentrated in Emergency Shelter Complex 7. They're alive, but sir... His voice cracked as the full implications of the censored data hit him like a physical blow. "They're not just hunting us. They're hurting us." The tactical display Walsh was transmitting showed the truth in stark relief. The creatures hadn't randomly driven humans into the shelters. They had systematically eliminated escape routes, blocked alternative hiding places, and funneled every survivor into a single location. The emergency shelters weren't sanctuaries, they were collection points. The implications hit Captain Stone like a sledgehammer to the chest. Pathfinder, extract immediately. We're coming down. Walsh was already moving, his enhanced muscles carrying him toward the extraction point with inhuman speed. But as he ran, he allowed himself a smile that would have made his drill instructors proud. His creatures had made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that humans, like every other species they had encountered, could be predicted, controlled, and ultimately harvested like any other resource. "With pleasure, sir," Walsh replied, his voice carrying the kind of controlled fury that had made humanity the most feared warriors in the galaxy. These things picked the wrong species to farm. Because here's what the creatures didn't understand about humans. They weren't just another prey species to be managed. They were the end result of 4 million years of evolutionary arms race against everything their death world could throw at them. They were persistence hunters who could track wounded prey across continents. They were pack predators who could coordinate complex strategies without verbal communication. Most importantly, they were the only species in known space that became more dangerous when their young were threatened. As Walsh reached his extraction point and prepared to upload the tactical data that would turn the tide of this conflict, somewhere in the deep shelters of Delta Prime, 8,000 humans felt something they hadn't experienced in 16 hours of terror: hope. They didn't know why yet, but their genetic memory recognized the sound of the cavalry coming to the UHO rescue. The real question was whether the creatures would realize their mistake before it was too late to matter. Exactly 12 hours after Sergeant Danny Walsh's drop pod had screamed through Delta Prime's atmosphere, Captain Stone stood in the colony's central plaza, surveying what could only be described as a miracle wrapped in methodical violence. The mining station was secure. Every tunnel had been cleared. Every shadow had been searched. Every nightmare that had crawled up from the planet's core had been eliminated with the kind of thoroughness that separated human military doctrine from everyone else's. The creatures, all 47 of them, were dead, not captured for study, not driven back to whatever hell had spawned them. Dead. Eliminated with the methodical precision that marked humanity's approach to existential threats. The same systematic completeness that had once convinced saber-toothed cats and cave bears to find less dangerous prey. Commander Jake Morrison emerged from Emergency Shelter Complex 7, blinking in the artificial daylight of the colony's restored atmospheric processors. Behind him came a stream of survivors, men, women, children, elderly colonists, miners, administrators, teachers. 11,847 souls who had spent 16 hours believing they were about to become livestock for alien nightmares. Morrison's handshake with Captain Stone lasted longer than military protocol typically allowed. But some moments transcend regulations. The colony commander was a man who had served in Earth's colonial Marine Corps before retiring to the Outer Rim, and he recognized the particular brand of controlled violence that had just saved his people. "Captain," Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had stared death in the face and lived to tell about it, "we thought we were finished. Those things ... they weren't just animals. They were intelligent. They were learning our defensive patterns faster than we could adapt them, developing countermeasures for every strategy we implemented." His voice cracked slightly. "They were herding us like cattle." Stone nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the tactical display that showed the final casualty reports. 0 human deaths during the liberation operation. The alien rescue fleet had lost 37 personnel, trying to accomplish what 300 humans had finished in half a day. They made one critical mistake. "Commander, they threatened human children." And there it was, the line that separated humanity from every other species in the galaxy. Other civilizations might negotiate with threats to their territory, compromise when faced with superior force, or calculate acceptable losses when confronting overwhelming odds. Humans had a different approach to anyone who threatened their young. Complete and absolute extinction of the threat. Admiral Vexler's holographic image materialized in the plaza as the last evacuation transport lifted off, carrying survivors toward the safety of the human fleet. The alien commander's chromatophores were cycling through color patterns that his species translator couldn't quite interpret, a mixture of awe, gratitude, and something that might have been existential: terror. Captain Stone, Vexter began, his tentacles performing gestures that conveyed respect in 17 different alien cultures. Your species' combat effectiveness against an adaptive enemy was unprecedented in 50 years of galactic service. I have never witnessed anything comparable. He paused, his sensory organs focusing intently on Stone's face. How did you overcome creatures that neutralized our most advanced energy weapons, developed immunity to our plasma bombardments, and adapted to our tactical doctrine faster than our computers could process countermeasures? Stone gestured toward his troops, who were methodically sterilizing the remaining tunnel systems with controlled plasma burns, ensuring that nothing, not even bacterial remnants, would remain of the creatures that had presumed to hunt human beings. Admiral, you saw monsters that adapted to technology. We saw parasites that threatened our hive. The alien commander's translator sparked briefly, struggling with concepts that didn't exist in most galactic languages. Your ... hive. I was not aware that humans possessed collective consciousness capabilities. Stone's smile carried the same gentle warmth that a great white shark might display while explaining. Marine biology to a confused seal? Humanity, Admiral? Every human, everywhere. When you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. And we've been dealing with things that wanted to eat us since we climbed down from the trees and decided that being prey was unacceptable. Here's what the alien commander was beginning to understand. Though his evolutionary programming made it difficult to accept, humans weren't just another. It's intelligent species that had developed technology and achieved spaceflight. They were the end product of 4 million years of continuous warfare against everything their homeworld could throw at them. They were survivors who had turned survival into an art form, then weaponized that art form into the most effective military doctrine in known space. Vexter processed this information with growing unease, his species equivalent of a chill running down his spine. Your homeworld created such intense selective pressures. Our homeworld didn't create pressures, Admiral, Stone replied, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone whose ancestors had personally introduced dozens of apex predators to the concept of extinction. Our homeworld created us. The implications of that statement rippled through the alien's consciousness like shockwaves from a stellar explosion.
Ow.
Earth hadn't just been a difficult world that happened to produce tough inhabitants. Earth had been a 4 billion-year laboratory specifically designed to create the most dangerous predators in galactic history. Every ice age, every mass extinction, every evolutionary bottleneck had been a test that humanity's ancestors had not just survived, but used as opportunities to become more efficient killers, as the human fleet prepared to depart Delta Prime, leaving behind a mining station that would be rebuilt stronger than before. The Galactic Coalition's military databases quietly updated their threat assessment protocols. The entry was simple, direct, and would be referenced by military commanders across the galaxy for centuries to come. Asterisk: when diplomacy fails, call the mediators. When civilization crumbles, call the peacekeepers. When extinction comes calling, call the humans. They're the only species in the galaxy that extinction is afraid of. Asterisk: 6 months later. Long-range sensors detected similar bioweapons, emerging from the core worlds of 3 different star systems. Each time, the creatures took one look at the response fleet composition, recognized the distinctive engine signatures of human warships, and immediately retreated back to whatever deep places had spawned them. Some threats, once properly educated by Earth's children, develop an instinctive understanding of which prey species are worth the risk. The mining station at Delta Prime was rebuilt within a year, stronger and more defensible than before. Creatures never returned. Throughout the Outer Rim, colonists slept more soundly, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, 300 humans with standard-issue weapons had reminded the universe why humanity had never needed to evolve natural armor, poison glands, or energy weapons. They had something better. They had each other. And for 1,000,000 years of experience, proving that anything threatening their family was making the last mistake it would ever make. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. There are apex predators, and there are humans. The difference is that apex predators are afraid of something: the end.